Well, hello, Woodmen, and greetings to guests who may be joining us this weekend. We are so glad you've decided to do so. You know, generally, I don't like to talk about football. We have a lot of Denver Bronco fans in our church, and I am an ardent fan of the Green Bay Packers, and so a lot of times it just creates like an unnecessary division between us. But there's no games playing right now, hopefully in the fall, but I thought I would take this opportunity to answer one of the questions you most often ask me. Why is some boy from Canada a fan of the Green Bay Packers? Well, it was 1992, and at the time I wasn't really a football fan at all. And my parents were watching one of those news shows, 60 Minutes or something, and they were interviewing Jerry Jones. Not my parents, the show. And I kind of walked in, and I remember looking and saying, like, who's that? And my dad's like, well, he owns the Dallas Cowboys. And I was just a little perplexed. What do you mean he owns them? He's like, oh, they're all like, each team is like a company, and they have owners. They buy and sell the teams. Oh, okay, that's cool. It was literally the next weekend. My dad's watching football Sunday afternoon, and I come in. And I say, who's the green and gold team? He's like, okay. That's the exception. They're the one team that doesn't have an owner. They're actually owned by their community. And I thought that was really cool. And I also thought their new starting quarterback, Brett Favre, was pretty good as well. And that's where it began. Now, I'm sharing that with you today because this weekend we are going to start a new study from the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes is one of the wisdom books in the Old Testament. But what makes it unique is that if the book of Proverbs is like the standard of biblical wisdom, the book of Ecclesiastes is the exception to that wisdom. To use an example from the English language, right? Proverbs would be I before E. And then Ecclesiastes is, well, except after C and sometimes Y, and in those words that begin with an A sound like neighbor. Ecclesiastes is the counterbalance to the book of Proverbs. Lest we think there is a list of directives that if we follow, we will have stability and security in this world. The book of Ecclesiastes reminds us it's not always so. If you will forgive the illustration, Ecclesiastes is the model or the actress that takes the selfie with no makeup on. Hashtag real life. It's a forthright, sometimes depressing, honest assessment of the world in which we live. It is an acknowledgement of reality. It's an acknowledgement of what is true. Now, I imagine for some of us, this is not the kind of study you may think we need to jump in right now. Perhaps with what we're going through, we need something encouraging. We need something uplifting to speak to the times that we're in. I think, however, Ecclesiastes is exactly the kind of book we should be looking at. You may not know this, but we actually lay out our teaching calendar, the content we're going to look at every July for the next year ahead. That means that we were praying, we were seeking God's direction, and we were like, this is what we will start after Easter. And God knew what we'd be going through. And I think He wants us to look at this on purpose. Now, that being said, it will require our big boy, big girl pants. It is very forthright, stark, and at times sobering. So if you would, let me pray, and we will invite God to help us as we begin chasing after the wind. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, We thank you for a great weekend, last weekend, together yet though apart. God, we thank you that your book, this Bible, is not filled with just warm and fuzzy feelings, but speaks to the realities of life. God, I pray that you would open our eyes so that we could behold the wondrous things you have for us here. God, help me not make any mistakes. Help me to stay true to what your word teaches and be glorified in us as we study. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, if you have a Bible, turn to the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes. Sort of go in the middle. There's the big book of Psalms. Go right, Proverbs, and then Ecclesiastes. And I'll tell you this as we start. It's going to be a little slow going in the first point because there's a lot of things we need to unpack and understand for the remainder of the study. But it begins with this thought. We live on a treadmill. We live on a treadmill. It starts this way, Ecclesiastes 1, verse 1. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. There are two characters in the book of Ecclesiastes. There's the preacher, and then there's the author or narrator who records the preacher's words, and then at the end comments on them. And the word translated preacher is a Hebrew word, kohelet. And the kohelet was one who would assemble a group or a congregation for the purpose of instruction, which is why some Bibles translate it teacher, some translate it preacher. Both are appropriate. And it says son of David, king in Jerusalem. And up until the 18th century, by and large, everybody thought this was referring to King Solomon, the son of David. Since then, a lot of scholars, the majority of scholars, think it wasn't Solomon himself that was writing saying these things, but someone else speaking in his name. Now, I probably lean a little more on that it's Solomon, but that would put me in the minority spot. Either way, it was Solomon or someone who wanted us to think of Solomon. But just to keep it clear, as we go through, we'll just refer to the preacher. And the author or narrator begins by quoting the preacher, and it is a sobering beginning. Look at verse 2. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. This is a really important theme to understand because the preacher's going to use this phrase some 38 times throughout this book. And it's a tough word to sort of translate. The NIV, the New International Version, translates it as meaningless, which isn't awesome because the preacher isn't saying that everything's meaningless. The ESV, the English Standard Version I'm using here, translates as a vanity, but I think in our usage we think of self-pride, which isn't what he's getting after either. The word is hevel in Hebrew, and it was used to translate, we would translate it directly like mist, vapor, breath. Think of a candle that you blow out and the smoke rises. It's fleeting. It's hard to grasp and then it's gone. That's the picture. The word here is used in context to describe things that are fleeting or elusive. And in this case, the preacher is saying, seriously so. Whenever you have in the Bible something of something, which is the same something as the first something, it means like lots. The Song of Songs is like the best song ever. The Holy of Holies is the most holy place. Vanity of vanities, like serious elusiveness. And he doubles down on it, says it twice, and then in case you still missed it, he says, all is vanity. Verse 3. What does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. And this too is another important theme to understand because he's going to use this phrase, under the sun, some 30 times. And what he's getting at is under the sun, as opposed to that which is in heaven. He's talking about from a human perspective, from the way we view the world, from what we can observe. What's the point? What does anybody gain from all of their work? He doesn't say it right yet. But what he's going to get at is, what's the point in all that we do if this is all that there is? He's talking about a human perspective, not a spiritual one. And then he gives an example, right? In verse 4, it's an example. A generation comes, a generation goes, and things just keep rolling. People are born, people die, repeat. And then he gives a threefold picture from nature. Look at verse 5. He says, the sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams return to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. The idea is, as we look at it in our perspective, the sun is moving, the sun is doing stuff. From our perspective, we see the wind blow in and then the wind stops. The wind is doing stuff. We can observe a river, white water flowing into the sea. It's in motion. It's doing stuff. But the preacher's like, take one step back. It does the same stuff all the time. The sun does come up, but it takes the same course every single day, and then it does it again the next. And even when it changes for the seasons and moves a little bit, it just goes back to the same spot it was. And the wind, it's just going in circles. It's not like we had wind back in 1927 and haven't had it since. The wind comes and it blows and it shakes up and then it leaves, but it comes back. And even as we watch all that white water rushing into the ocean, the sea level isn't rising. The ocean isn't full now. No, it just keeps going. Whether it's generations, the sun, wind, or sea, the only thing that changes is time. The preacher's like, if you try to wrap your head around it, it'll just blow you out. That's what he starts off with in verse 8. What has been is what will be. That's verse 9. So why don't we go to verse 8? Let's do verse 8. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. He's like, if you really try to wrap your head around all this routine, it just ends up making you tired. Because it's the same old all the time. The problem is, in and of ourselves, we don't like same old. We want something new. That's what the back half of verse 8 says. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. We crave new. We crave interesting. It's why we check our phones so much. It's why we endlessly scroll. We want to see something new. We want to see something different. And the preacher's like, the problem is, there isn't anything. There just isn't. Verse 9. What has been is what will be. And what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It's been already in the ages before us. Now, clearly we hear that and we can point to advancements that were obviously, the poor preacher doesn't know about air travel. We can sit in a seat and fly through the sky. That's new. That's cool. But if he was here and we said, like, dude, you were a little off. You didn't know air travel was coming. Preacher would be like, I'll be honest with you. We used to walk everywhere. And then some dude was like, hey, why don't we get on that horse? And that made it better. And then we were like, hey, let's build a boat and we can go across on the sea. And then we had the wheel and we did carts and then we did cars and then you do planes and maybe space travel. At the end of the day, it's A to B. Nothing new per se. It's just variations on a theme. It's just transportation. It's actually not new. It's just a different way of doing something we did before. Verse 11, there is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. Some manuscripts don't say things, they say people. He's like, there's no remembrance of things or people in the past, and there will be no remembrance in the future of us or our things either. And it's true. There is actually very little remembrance of things in the past. You probably never think about the day the first automobile was sold in America. It was an awesome day. But we don't care anymore. And when's the last time students, when you go to school this fall, right, fingers crossed, you're going to school, and you sit in your chair, do you ever think, I wonder who sat in this chair 6 years ago? Nope. There's no remembrance of the things or the people past. And what's gutting is the people in the future are going to do the same thing to us. There'll be very little remembrance of us. Very little remembrance of the things we thought were cool and special. It's like what we talked about last weekend. The vast majority of us will one day be forgotten and really have very little lasting impact on the course of the world. It's in this futility that the preacher describes. It's in this never-ending treadmill that he observes that caused one commentator to say this. Ecclesiastes is the only book in the Bible that we know was written on a Monday. I mean, doesn't it just sound kind of like a Monday? You have a great weekend, you go to sleep, and then alarm goes off, and you get up, back to the grind, and so everything repeats. And it actually never stops. I mean, I guess that is until now. Certainly our first responders, certainly people in essential businesses are still cranking as they ever were, and in some cases much more. But a ton of us have seen things really change and slow down. And the thing is this, could you concede that like 6 weeks ago, do you think it ever crossed your mind, if I could just have like 1 month at home, it would be awesome? And now you've had that 1 month at home, and what's everybody asking? When can I go back? It's like Mick Jagger was onto something. We just can't get no satisfaction. It's like we are always peering over the fence, and the grass is always greener on the other side. That's the thing that remains the same. No matter what we have, we think there's something more. The teenager wants his license, and then he gets his license and he wants to move out, and then he moves out and he wants a better place without those roommates, and then he gets rid of those roommates, he wants a better job, a new car, then he wants to be married, and then he gets married. It just never stops. It's the treadmill that we live on. And the preacher looks at this world And he's like, it's not going to change. It's not changing. But we never find what it is we're looking for. And instead, we tell ourselves we just need to run faster. Verse 12, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. Now the preacher speaks. It's not the author, narrator quoting him. He speaks himself. And we are to think of Solomon, because Solomon could be the only king who was the son of David and still ruled over all of Israel from Jerusalem, because after him, the kingdom split. And it says he applied his heart. And he's not using heart the way we use heart, as just feelings or emotion. He's talking about, I applied my heart, my mind, my will. He applied everything he had to seek out and search out wisdom. He says it two ways. This was not some random Google search and the first Wikipedia article he took. No, he sought wisdom to try to make sense of this world. And his conclusion? It's an unhappy business that God has given us. This is a raw deal. And he says, I have seen everything. And there's two parts to that. Again, this is from his human perspective, right? This is not God revealed. It's not like God has told him, hey, preacher, everything is meaningless. No. It's what he observes. But he's pretty convinced, because he says, I have seen everything. He's confident. He is leaving no room for something in the future happening that's going to change his view of things. He's like, I tried wisdom, and it really didn't work. And he quotes this proverb, what is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. And for us Bible folk, crooked kind of creates in our minds this picture of like immorality, sinful, the crooked path. And he doesn't mean it like that. He's talking about what's crooked, more the way we would say, there's things in life that don't make sense. And no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to make everything make sense. There are just things that don't make sense. Human wisdom. Early to bed, early to rise will make a person healthy, wealthy, and wise. And I don't think we've asked that into our heart, but we sort of functionally think it's true. I don't know any parents of teenagers who endorse stay up all night and sleep all day. They just don't. Go to bed early. It keeps you out of trouble, the naughty things you could be doing at night. And get a crack on the day and get up early and well rested. You'll be better prepared to learn. It's just good counsel. It's good wisdom. But the preacher would say, dude, I knew a guy went to bed at 9 every night. He got up at 5 every day, and then he got sick, and then he died. So, what do you do with that? There are exceptions to wisdom. You could live the wisest life, and it could not go well. There is something wrong in the world. There's something crooked in the world, and you and I can never be wise enough to outsmart it. So he goes in the other direction. Look at verse 16. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. My heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is but a striving after wind, for in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. Solomon is not being arrogant when he's like, I'm pretty wise. He was the wisest guy that ever lived. When he ascended to the throne, you read in 1 Kings, God said to him, ask me whatever you want. And Solomon answered wisely. Didn't ask for riches, didn't ask for a long life, didn't ask for 3 more wishes. What he asked for was wisdom. And because he did, God said, I will give that to you and the other stuff, and you'll be the wisest person, like none that have come before you and like none that will come after. He was literally made the wisest person ever. And people would travel from all over to just hear him speak. But since he found wisdom still wanting, here he's like, well, why don't I try the other way? I've tried wisdom. I'm going to try madness and folly. It's like George Costanza in Seinfeld when he says, I'm going to do the opposite of everything I think. Now, for George, it worked out. Solomon tried it, and it still left him hungry. It too, he says, was chasing after wind. Essentially, that little proverb is, the more that you know, the more things will frustrate you. I learned this early on in college. I worked for this guy as a painter at times. And he had 3 rules. First rule was bang it on. And what he meant by that is, I want you to be painting so fast that I can hear the paint bang off the wall. The second one was, nobody is going to look at your work as closely as you are. The third rule was, so bang it on. And I remember at first thinking that was kind of crazy, but you know what? As I've had to do painting around the house, I found myself in those places where I'm like, I just can't get it straight. But if I go any further, it's going to get messed up. And then people have come to my home. Do you know what no one has ever said to me in any room in my house? Hey, so what happened there? They just don't notice it. It's like you walk up to somebody, you're like, hey, that's a nice car. And they say, well, it's good from far, far from good. There's a scratch over here, and if you come over on this side, there's a little bit of rust. It's why musicians don't actually hope for perfect pitch. Because if you have perfect pitch, every single concert's going to be ruined the rest of your life because you're going to hear everything out of tune. The more we know, the more we have to be frustrated with. The fundamental problem we have is we tell ourselves, no, it's not that. It's that I have to be smarter. I just have to work harder. I just have to try something else. But we still won't find what we're looking for. We're just refusing to acknowledge the world for what it is. This has led one commentator. He described it like, it's like we're all just playing a game of let's pretend. Let's pretend that if we get the promotion and the bigger house, that we'll be happier. Let's pretend that if we get married, we'll be satisfied. Let's pretend that if we end that marriage, then things will be good. Let's pretend that if we do all the dishes and all the laundry and run all the kids around this week, that next week will not be the same. Let's just pretend. Run as hard as you like. Chase wisdom. Chase folly. It's all just chasing after wind. And let me ask you, are you tired of running? If I could call a timeout. Up until this point, it's pretty stinking depressing. As it is, under the sun, things really are. But what we're going to see as we study this book, the preacher is wanting to open our eyes to something more. Like Neo in the Matrix, he wants us to look beyond our reality and see what lay behind it. We live on this treadmill, and we tell ourselves, if I just run faster. But through Christ, here's the beautiful thing. we can just step off. We can, through Christ, just step off the treadmill. Jesus was speaking to a group of Pharisees, and he said in Matthew 12:42, "The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, something greater than Solomon is here." Jesus' point is a profound one. He's talking about when the Queen of Sheba traveled miles and miles and miles to sit at Solomon's feet and learn. And Jesus is like, on the day of judgment, she will say, "You guys were foolish because something greater than Solomon was right in front of you." And Jesus is like, that's me. I'm greater than Solomon. Jesus would say in John 14:6, "I am the way and the truth and the life." What you and I are searching for will only be satisfied in Jesus Christ. Jesus would say, "For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?" This is what the preacher is actually going to get at. And he's not saying that if you gain the whole world, you won't have something. He's not dumb. He knows if you gain the world, you will have lots. But you still will not have the thing you're looking for. The preacher saw beyond what this world held dear. And he recognizes there is nothing under the sun that will satisfy. But there is one in heaven who can. And the Apostle Paul, he had his matrix moment. He would say in Philippians 1:21, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." He looked beyond this world to Jesus, and he realized whether I'm here or whether I'm there with him, I actually have all that I need. He's one who is greater than Solomon. He's one who will one day make all things new. He's the one who satisfied and was worth giving all he had to. In a way, our study last weekend was a really great introduction to the book of Ecclesiastes. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Now, I know it's a bad word in a lot of families, so little ones, listen to Pastor Josh right now, and let's just put on our earmuffs, okay? Can we do that? I hate the treadmill. I hate it. My best part about being on the treadmill is to think the clock will go to 0 and I will be able to step off the thing. And I have to imagine there are some of you right now, you hate the treadmill you're on too. The striving, the trying, the routine, repetitive, unyieldingness of this life. It's just too much. I want you to hear me when I say, Jesus would tell you today, you can just step off. You can just step off. The thief came to steal and kill and destroy. But Jesus came that you could have life and have it abundantly. Jesus Christ died upon the cross to redeem us from our sin and this life of monotony we find ourselves in. Confess him as Lord. Believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead and ask him to give you this new life. Some of you, this sounds appealing. That freedom, that sense of something different. I'm telling you, that's Jesus. Trust in him this day. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your great love. We thank you that Jesus stepped into this vanity of vanities to point us in a new way, to give us eyes that see not just under the sun, but what is above it. God, help us to, in faith, step off that treadmill and enjoy the abundant life found in Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.